Tell me, Mark. Sorry to hear about you. Yeah, I was gonna say you need a little corner.
You guys ready? Everybody ready? Obviously, we're very excited about another class. We've addressed our needs. We've got another scholarship left over in case we pick somebody up before August. But as you guys have seen the list, we had the majority of high school players, and then we picked up a few big guys from two-year schools that we feel like could really address some issues right away for next year. But this is really a quality class. We've moved in the direction of trying to really secure cerebral football players, guys that we think can think and react really fast in the game. We tried to do as much research as we could in those areas. And as always, I'm very excited about these guys. We'll know a lot more about them in 2 years. But They're good young men. They come from quality people that understand the character and the structure and the accountability and the discipline that it takes to be successful here. And, it's interesting in recruiting. Over the last couple of years, I've noticed that sometimes we have young men visit here that find out what it takes to be a part of our team, and they end up not coming here because of that. Which was good for everybody. You want young men to be here and understand the role that they play and the commitment that we have as coaches in the university to fulfilling their education and allowing them to be a part of a team and play for a championship. So I'll answer questions about any of them, but we're really, really excited about the guys that are in this class.
Mike, the skills overall look really good. Talk about, if you can, the two running backs, because I think J.D. King played for a state championship. A lot of people saw him. And Chuba is just a special athlete all the way around.
The could be the most interesting position for us in a year. We'll see where they're at. Obviously, Chuba has world-class speed. There's been some conversation that maybe in 4 years he could be running in the Olympics, whether that's right or wrong, either way. But I kind of go back to what Coach Jones used to say: when you get to a certain point, you're really fast. He's really fast. But what's interesting is when he was here on his visit, he weighed 196 pounds, and he broke a bone, cracked a bone in his leg in his last game of the year, so he hasn't been able to train, and he still weighed 196 pounds. So what's interesting about him is could potentially weigh 215 easy, maybe 220, and he's already run a 10.5. So a special athlete. And then with King, we had him committed for a long time. I was concerned a little bit with the distance. But when he came back on his visit with his mom, I had a good conversation with her. And she said from day one when he visited here in the spring, he called her after he was on campus for about 2 hours and said, "Mom, I'm going to Oklahoma State." And she said, "What?" And he said, "I've just never felt this way. I feel like it's home, and I'm going to Oklahoma State." And so we were able to hang on to him. But he's another young man that's already over 200 pounds. I think he was 207 on his visit. So potentially two backs that are very skilled, had a lot of success. They've been durable, and could be 215, 220 pounders.
You mentioned Chuba had the broken bone in his last game. He played on it. I mean,
Yeah, and again, right, I don't know if it was broken or cracked or either way, but they set him for 6 weeks afterwards. He went ahead and finished the game, that's right.
When you say cerebral football players, Mike, what are you referring to, and what do you see as being the big benefit in that?
Well, as you guys know, the game's changed considerably, and especially in this league. Teams are playing with 3 and 4 people split out of the backfield. They're moving them across. They're faking a handoff. They're faking a toss. They're throwing a pass. And maybe more so on defense than any, in our opinion, you have to be able to think really fast. I have a gap responsibility, I have a coverage responsibility, and then I have a play-pass responsibility, all while 2 guys are moving on the snap of the ball that could potentially change my gap responsibility. And so each year we evaluate what we think we've done positive and things we need to improve in all areas. And over the last couple of years, and particularly this year, we feel like that players that are able to think really fast and react, football savvy, could be more beneficial to our program than ever before. So I guess what I'm saying is, if the prototype at a certain position is 6'2" and you're only 6'1.5", and you need to be 225 and you're only 215, and you need to run a 4.7 and you run a 4.85, if we think you're a cerebral player and you can get there faster, we're probably going to take you instead of the other guy.
As you evaluate that aspect, is that just talking to coaches, high school coaches, your observations? How much of that also is classroom work and stuff like that? Does it all go together?
It ties in some to the classroom, and being an employee of a public education our university, I'd like to say it's 100%, but it's not 100%. We all know we've had buddies that weren't fired up about school, but they were terrific on the field, and vice versa. So it's a little bit of everything, but we tried to be as detailed and as in-depth this year as ever in information about players, background checks. That's kind of the new fad, and try to reach as deep as possible into that, and that's not foolproof. Sometimes you don't get all that information. But even asking questions, more detail on the staff, the coaching staff, about certain things that they did at their particular position, and got their honest opinion on how they felt about them if we were trying to grade them from 1 to 10 on being a very savvy, cerebral football player and not just an athletic player that so-called had potential.
Coach, you mentioned a couple of times throughout the season with social media affecting kids' kind of awareness and retention of information. Going through this recruiting process, was there anything you learned new about even younger kids and what they're kind of dealing with how they process, your sales pitch to them?
Well, honestly, I find out after the fact. I get it from my 12-year-old. This morning early, he was calling me on his way to school, telling me who had signed. He knew it before I did, and he was on Instagram. Somehow he was getting it on Instagram before I was getting it. So what I found out is the technology is increasing every day, and it wasn't as out of control this recruiting year as what I thought it would be. It's almost settled down to a certain extent. We've not ever really been big fans of the recruiting taking place on Twitter, but I think it's settled down a little bit. But there is instant information out there, and a year ago I would have said that over half of it was false, and I'm going to say now that 75% of it is true. It's more accurate than it's ever been, and I think that's because it's coming from the source.
Like this, sort of evaluating how cerebral guys are, is that something you did more in this cycle than you have in years past?
Much more. We started it last year and we liked where it was, and then we felt really good about it, and so we pushed harder on this class than ever about trying to bring in young men that fit the prototype, maybe a little bit more cerebral player and may not be as fast or as tall.
Having a coaching staff that's been with you now almost 2 years, how did that positively influence this recruiting process?
It makes a big difference. You impact your recruiting classes impact when you lose a coach, either before or right after the bowl game, and then even worse if you lose one a week or two before signing day. It creates some doubt, and allows the other teams to come in and take shots at you. At times you can defend it off, and sometimes you can't. So it makes it much easier. These guys held for the most part. As I said, we had a couple guys. We had 2 guys a month or so ago, month and a half ago, that went to other places. But for the most part, we held everybody. And really, we held everybody except with the ones that come in that really see how things operate in our program, and maybe it's not for them.
You've always said you'd rather not recruit a quarterback your height or smaller because of your experience. I'd say you kind of upheld that with the quarterback in this class. You got to look up to him.
Yeah, he's a big man. He's on campus now. Jelani's is here, and he had a great year. I think they started out 2-3, or 1-2. I can't remember. Then they ran the table and he won a state championship. So we're excited about him. He's in the program. A lot of substance to him. Comes from a good mom and daddy. They understand commitment and the structure and discipline that we look for. It'll be really interesting to see how he develops. We'll have an interesting spring because Mason, we won't work him a lot. We'll work the younger guys. And so as we have our 3 or 4 thud scrimmages in the spring, the majority of it will be these young quarterbacks, and we'll let them play.
I know the flights are one thing, but have you found that the novelty of Stillwater is kind of increasing year to year in terms of a recruiting tool?
The flights are a big plus for us. Population's growing here. We're at almost 55,000, and enrollments up to 21,000. So the growth, economic growth east of the community, all those things have helped us some. But we still get young men to come here who have, or I should say, are very serious about getting an education, being part of a team, making friends for life, and competing for a championship. Those are the ones that come to school here. And we don't try to hide that. Years ago, we used to try to make Stillwater something that it wasn't. And I say this to the parents and to the young men. We don't have nightclubs that stay open until 4 a.m. here. So if you're looking for that type of lifestyle, then you need to go somewhere else because you'll be disappointed when you get here. Our best recruiters have been our current team, the guys that are on our team right now, because we've been here long enough that they can tell the young men that visit our campus whatever they tell you is the truth. It's the way it is. We're very transparent. We're very upfront. We don't hide anything. We tell them exactly the way it's going to be. That way when they get here, you don't have any disgruntled players in the organization. Everybody understands the direction we're going. And we've done that now for years, and it works for us.
I thought it was interesting. You might get John Smith out there to watch some of your kids in this class because Fua Leilua, the snow kid from Utah, Malcolm Rodriguez, and especially Brock Martin, all have won or will win more individual wrestling championships.
Sure. And Brandon Evers was a good wrestler. He's a good one. So I'm excited about the class of from Oklahoma. I've said this for the last couple of years, and I'll say it again this year. The talent in the state of Oklahoma is getting better and better each year. And with the budget cuts and the education cuts that we have in this state, I'm not sure how that's happening because there's been cuts all across the board. The coaches are cut, teaching's cut. I'm a big proponent of doing whatever it takes to make education and fund education in this state. But it's not happened, and for whatever reason, the talent's just gotten better and better. And we have a number of young men from Oklahoma that are in this group that fit the criteria that we started this conversation with today. And as you guys know, I'm a big fan of wrestlers, a sport that takes discipline, accountability, structure, and when you're out there on the mat, you can't look and blame anybody else. You're on your own. And that's why I like those guys. But when you look at the guys that we have, you talked about Evers, and you have Brock, and you have Odom, Rodriguez, and had one other one, I think. Is that it? I thought we had 4. Yeah.
Evers, Martin, Rodriguez, and Odom.
Yeah, we got 4. Okay, so when you talk about those guys, they kind of fit what we talked about earlier, and we're excited about those guys, and it's important to them. You know, they're from right around here, and there's no question that the geological location of the players makes a huge impact on your program.
Coach, you got a Garvin County kid in Odom. Is that your first time signing somebody from that neck of the woods?
I don't know what all cities are in Garvin County, but I know that I've heard it on the weather when there's tornado warnings. So we're excited about what Barron brings. He got in really late. We had an opening. He's a 4-sport athlete. He's 6'4.5", 222 pounds, 4 sports. So hadn't really had a chance to grow and develop. We look for him to be 250 in a year and a half, and play that role that Blake Jarwin played for us. And it's nice for us to be able to say we had a spot open. Wow, let's take an Oklahoma kid. We got one sitting right there. And when I talked to him on the phone, I wanted to make it clear to him that no matter if you're with us for a year or a day, on signing day, in the end, it's all the same. And I use the example of Marcus Keys that we took at 11 o'clock at night before signing day a couple years ago, and he started all 13 games this year at left guard for us as I think a redshirt freshman. And he was the last guy we took in the class. And so not that Barron needed to hear that, but I told him that's what happened to Marcus Keys. So we're excited that he's a part, and he's an Oklahoma kid.
Being from Class A, obviously also Seton was from Class A. Is it more difficult to find talent down there because they're not getting maybe the notoriety or playing as much talent as guys from Tulsa and Oklahoma City?
It's harder to evaluate. There's not as much size and speed in some of your smaller schools because of the population. There's not as many numbers to pick from. So what you're saying is right. It is more difficult, in our opinion, to evaluate. And there are more players that come from those schools that get missed on because sometimes coaches fall into a routine of how to evaluate, and it is more difficult. That's where the mistakes are made, in my opinion. We try to go the other direction, but we're not perfect either. Recruiting obviously is not a perfect science. Well, for example, we had our last 5 classes, 16, 15, 14, 13, and 12. Our average rating from one of the bigger recruiting services was 36th in the country. And if you take those 5 classes, which whatever this class is rated, we won't know much about it until 2 years from now. I mean, you're not going to know anything about these guys next year. 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and 4 years from now, you can kind of evaluate this class and say, okay, either we were right or wrong. Well, if you go back the last 5 years, it's fair to say in 14, 13, and 12, that we can somewhat evaluate those classes now based on the success we've had. We won 21 games in 2 years, and we were ranked average 36 in the country during those 5 years. So there's one of two things happening. Either we're damn good evaluators and the recruiting services don't know what they're talking about, or we're damn good coaches. One or the other. I don't know which one it is. But we're not changing what we do.
You know, I was going to ask you that because I've been trying to get through to Tom Luganville from ESPN, who I think's pretty good at what he does. And there's a lot of people that rank recruits, but along the lines of what you just said there, with an average ranking in the mid-30s, what is it that causes this program to overachieve? And maybe Rob Glass is in that equation. I mean, what is it?
Well, I had to ask 2 days ago because I figured that somebody would ask what about a rating or something, and I wanted to speak intelligently because I didn't know because I've never looked at it. I shouldn't say that. I haven't looked at it during recruiting. Sometimes I look at it afterwards just to kind of see where people fall. And I looked the other day. Well, I don't want to bring up another school, but anyway, I make comparisons at times based on things to try to supplement our research to make us better. And honestly, it's one of the two things that I mentioned, or what you talked about with Rob Glass, and that falls into what we do here. And I think he's the best in the country at what he does, period. We bring guys in, and in 2 years we develop them, and you know, they go from 18% body fat to 9% body fat, and they'll put on 15 pounds, and they go from a 4.8 to a 4.65. But more importantly, he instills discipline, structure, and toughness in them that really equates to who we are on game day and why we've been able to have as much success as we have on the field and in the classroom. And it was like a year ago, we have our APR, the annual retention rate, that's kind of the new grading scale for us as far as academics. You don't hear as much about graduation rate anymore. You hear about APR. Well, we were 1,000 last year. So there's something going on that's working in the right direction.
Which do you think it is, Mike? Damn good evaluator or damn good coach?
Honestly, I thought about it, and I thought, well, I didn't want to say it because I just opened myself up to all my buddies on sports radio taking shots at me, but I figured, what the hell? I mean, that'll at least give them something to talk about other than Trump for a while, So it's one of two, Barry. You've been around a long time. Either recruiting services don't give us credit, we're good evaluators, or we're good coaches.
But I'm serious.
I don't know. I mean,
in other words, it'd be a deal where you get a guy in here and pretty early when he's here, you think, man, he's really good. We're glad we got him. Or do you coach him up and in 3 years?
Little of both. Sometimes you're like, yeah, I don't know if we hit on that one. But and I hate to make these comparisons because it makes me look bad, but it's, sometimes when you're in college and you're dating a girl and you're all fired up and you go out with her and you sit there at the restaurant and, there's something, she smacks or something or does something to irritate you, and 15 minutes later you're like, oof, this is not good. And it's like, that's Debbie Downer, So you start trying to figure out how to get out of it and go home. Well, in recruiting, every player that we bring in here deserves a coach that believes in that player. And what we try to do, Barry, is we try to not evaluate a young man until he's been in our program for 24 months. And he's had a chance to grow up, he's had a chance to develop, he's had a chance to be in the weight room with Rob Glass. And then he has to start making some strides. But this is not the NFL, and you can't put it on Plan B. Is Plan B still active in the NFL? I don't even, it may be gone. Whatever. You can't trade them. They're here forever. And so we have to find a place for them. And I think that's where we've benefited the most over the last 5 or 6 years, is being able to say, look, let's find a way to make these guys contribute and help our team.
I know you've answered this one before too, but this program's tapped into the poly culture, the Samoan, Tongan youngsters, and you've done that again. I mean, you seem to really like those kids and what they stand for.
They're very loyal, very family oriented. They understand structure. They understand discipline in most cases. Their families or the generation before the parents of the young men that we're recruiting have had to work extremely hard to get to this country, and they're loyal to this country. They get up, they work every day, and they're thankful for who they are and where they're at. And that's exactly what we're looking for here. It's not 100%, but in most cases, they're not looking for not from a recruiting or from a cheating standpoint, but they're not looking for what all can you do for my son when he's here. What they tell their son is, here's an opportunity, you better do what they tell you to do. So it makes it easy to coach them. We don't have issues with them. They understand. I can pick the phone up and call their dads and say, we're having a class miss with so-and-so, and that'll be the last class miss we have from him. And so that's why we really enjoy their culture and what they stand for, and we've had a lot of success with those young men.
One kid I want to ask about in particular, because he got virtual no attention, and when you watch him, he pops off the video. Trey Sterling from Sunnyvale, Texas. He was all-state as a running back, but I think you intend to look at him on the defensive side.
Multi-sport, and also players who play on both sides of the ball have infatuated us over the last couple of years. Just from an athleticism standpoint, we've found that we've had more success with them being involved in special teams also, which is obviously a big part of the game. And he rushed for, I think, 2,000 yards. I can't remember. It all runs together for me. But when you go down and you talk to the coach, their head coach, he put him at running back because that's what he needed to do to win games. And that happens a lot at places. And he was able to play both ways. Dad's a high school principal. Very intelligent people, very cerebral, gets it, tough, durable, plays on both sides of the ball, very serious, no nonsense.
Is that cup a gift of Larry Fedora or Mason Rudolph?
Oh, this?
The Big Daddy.
Well, it's kind of a secret. I'm joking. That came from Gage. He's the one that I had the problem with my hair. That came from him.
What happened to the mullet?
Well, I cut 3 inches off during recruiting because it looked really floppy, and it's kind of embarrassed a little bit going in those homes. I didn't know how people would take it. But the repercussions of it have been negative from me cutting it. In fact, J.D. King's mom, when she was here, she said, Coach, if I was you, I wouldn't have cut your hair. That was your swag. I was like, okay, sounds good. So I trimmed it up a little bit.
Do you ever think a decade ago you'd be flying to Canada to visit high school football player?
Sure didn't. I went to Canada, left here and went there in the morning, then went to San Jose the same day. So I docked a lot of airline miles, and but you know it's interesting. We talked about JD, but Chew was the same way, in that he was committed really early, a long ways away from here. A lot of schools in that part of the country offered him scholarships, and I had some doubt whether we could hold him this long. But he stayed true, very loyal. Mom and Daddy raised him right and gets it. And had a good visit up there in Canada. You know, I'm excited about what he brings to the table. People ask all the time, you know, how fast he is. You know, he's really fast. I don't know. You know, people talk about comparing him to Tyreek. We'll find out when he gets here. We can run him, and we can make a comparison to where he's at with Tyreek, and see how fast he is.
When you said that a lot of people in that part of the country you were worried about, which country were you talking about?
Well, a lot of people in this part of our country, all the Pac, is it 12 or 14? I don't know, what is it, Pac-12. All the Pac-12 schools were taking shots at him, and so I figured it'd be difficult to keep him because it's a lot closer to him than we are, so I was a little concerned about that.
Pretty far, though.
It is still pretty far, but it's pretty far down here. But
Now, he's not getting in the car to go home for the weekend either.
no, you're right. See, you should be recruiting. You're either getting in a car or you're getting in a plane. Ours just happens to be 30 minutes further than the others, and their connections. So, and that's what we talked to him about is, you know, he flies to Denver and flies on in here. So he could go to some of those schools, and it would only be about 30 minutes less anyway.
You know the really fun thing? He's an answer to a trivia question. I swear you've never had a running back come here that's had a 105-yard run from scrimmage for a touchdown. Can't be done in this country.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. I did not know that, but yeah, that's a good trivia question. It's a good one.
You mentioned a second ago being sort of infatuated with multi-sport athletes, multi-position. It seems we always hear specialization is becoming more and more a thing. So is that something like cerebral football players you take into account?
You're saying specialization with high school kids?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't like it. I think high school kids ought to play as many sports as they want to play. I think that we're getting overwhelmed with travel baseball in the summer for young kids, travel softball, travel volleyball, AAU basketball, 7-on-7 for football, and it's discouraging some high school athletes from playing multi-sports. And for us, we think it's best for them to play multi-sports and compete year-round. If they're talented enough to get here, they're probably going to get here. If they're not talented enough to get here, they're probably not going to get here. So playing another sport's not really going to matter. So whenever we evaluate a young man, one of the first things I ask is, does he play any other sports? Like Justin Blackman was a heck of a basketball player. Des Bryant could do anything. So guys that are talented in other sports are usually more talented on the football field than guys that play one. Not always. And quarterbacks are a little different. They specialize a little quicker. But I would recommend that they play all the sports and have fun.
We've talked a lot about offensive line last couple of years around here. The couple of those guys you mentioned losing were offensive linemen. Was this a big year for you guys in getting offensive linemen, or I know you've got a lot of them already on campus, or can you make up for that?
We were going to take 4, John, and I don't know what the rules are, but everybody knows. I mean, we had a couple committed for a long, long time, and we lost them. And it's extremely difficult to make up ground in the third week in December at that particular position, especially on a 4-year player. Sometimes you can grab one on a 2-year, and that was the most difficult aspect of this class. But we've faced that before here, and so what we have to do is, as I had mentioned, the plan B, which is not there anymore. We have to find guys out there that can fill that role on the short term for maybe a year or two and fit them in. Because that happens to us. One of the disadvantages of where we're located is, there's 4 million people in the state of Oklahoma, and the number of large people that play football that are 17 years old that we recruit to play at this level, those numbers are considerably less than what's in the state south of us. So that's one area for us, in our opinion, that's difficult to hold the big guys, just because the pool to choose from is not as much, and everybody's picking at it. So we have to be a little, we have to step out of the box a little bit there and try to find ways to overcome it. We always have, and we will. I mean, we'll figure out a way, but I'm not going to sit here and say that when we had a couple guys that were with us a long time that departed didn't affect it. It affects us. I mean, it wasn't like I just said, well, it's no big deal. It affects you. But once they roll out of here, if you think about it more than about 2 seconds, then you're pretty much wasting your time, because it's not going to change. You need to start thinking about what you can do to fix it and find a solution, and that's what we do.
He's not technically part of this class, but after you lost this game, you brought in Tyler Moore from Minnesota.
It's one way right there. There's one answer.
Starter, right?
You're all over it. I don't even know if I can talk about him. I guess I can talk about him. He's in school here. Worst thing they could do to me can't be any worse than they're doing to these other coaches, what they're doing. So I figured, what the heck.
Speaking of guys, Coach, that play both ways in multi-sports, Malcolm Rodriguez, you mentioned him briefly. Just kind of what you saw out of him and what you think his potential could be.
37-0 in his last 37 games, I believe, as a quarterback. Big-time wrestler, and a heck of a shortstop in baseball. So what that tells you is he's got good eye-hand coordination, he's competitive, he's tough, and he's durable, and he's a winner. And when they showed me his tape and told me what came along with it, I mean, I couldn't get the words out of my mouth fast enough that y'all better go get him. It's hard to find young men like that. I mean, his track record says he's a winner.
From what you gathered, did the return of Mason and James have a direct impact on this recruiting class?
Mm-hmm. Just overall morale. There's just a perception and a feeling that's out there, and there's excitement that's out there. You have high-profile players like those two, and they say they're coming back, and you guys know they're non-BS guys, and they're hard workers. So now you have a leadership that's already established with them coming back, and there's excitement. The class of wide receivers in this group is fantastic. They think they're going to catch passes from Mason, so it impacted their decision and or them staying with us. So that feeling you get from young men coming back is always the perception is always positive.
We're 34 minutes into it. You just mentioned the receivers, and 2 of those guys are the 4-star guys, at least from the service I work for. LC
And your service is the only one that's any good. The rest of them aren't very good.
LC Greenwood and Tylan Wallace. I mean, one of them was in an All-American game, and then LC Greenwood kind of is another guy that pops off the video at you.
It's interesting when you look at him. LC is 6'3", and it got him down at 210. I think he's more than that. I think he was 218 on his visit. He's going to play at 230. He's a big man. When we offered him, I don't think he had any offers. Once he jumped on board, which is pretty traditional for us, every other Big 12 school goes in and offers him in most cases, and then we have to battle him, hold him off, and try to keep him. And I was concerned about that, because once they come in and look at his tape, they see his body structure. I thought this is going to be a battle, and there was a little battle at times, but we were able to hold him. So, Braden Johnson's 185 pounds, and he's fast. I mean, he can fly. I doubt that he'll run less than 4.45 after he's been here a year. So he allows us to take the top off the defense, which is what we want to do anyway. And then you have the Wallace, Tylan. Tylan is a fast Josh Stewart. Josh Stewart was tremendous in a phone booth. But when he opened it up, he was, 4.65, 4.7. Well, I think that Tylen has the same quick twitch as him, but he's going to run under 4.5. That's what you get with him. So it's a good group of skill.
Been an impression, Mike, the last few years that the SEC, particularly with A&M moving over there, has hurt you, hurt OU, hurt Texas, hurt everybody in this conference.
I think that's true.
Is that true? And what have you guys done to sort of combat that?
You know, with us, Barry, we don't really change a lot. Some of the schools that are making their way into Texas that have gotten those players to go to the SEC, they become really early offers for us, but we haven't been in the game with them late. So it doesn't really affect us that much, in my opinion. Now, people say, well, if they're taking players from them, then everything starts to slide down. There's some truth to that. But I wouldn't disagree that the departure of A&M to the SEC has certainly affected recruiting in the state of Texas and northern Louisiana. But I don't think it affects us as much as some of the other schools in the South, meaning Big 12 schools that are in the state of Texas. That's just our opinion.
Anything else for Coach? Thanks, guys.
I need to probably do a little rundown here on all these guys. You guys know about Evers, and then Sione is our cowboy back we took from San Mateo. You know, he needs to come in and play the Beach role. Zach Beach, we're looking for him to do that. We talked about LC. Arlington Hambright is what we talked about. A guy, you know, when we lost a couple, he's a guy that's coming in offensive line that we need to try to be an impact player for us. We talked about Chuba, Braden, JD. Fua, defensive tackle from out in Snow Junior College. He fits the OFA Mote role for us. I mean, he's that kind of athlete that we want to come in and be a big guy inside. Patrick Macon, you guys already knew about because he was here. Patrick is an inside backer for us. It was out at Arizona Western, originally from Tennessee. Talked about Brock. Jake McClure is our kicker/punter. We're really excited about Jake. Jake is athletic. Jake plays offense, plays defense. He's a soccer player. He's a punter and a kicker, and he is 6'3", and will probably be 215 pounds in a year or so. So we're really excited about him. Chris McCune, a safety from Dallas Christian, very athletic. I went and watched him play basketball. Watched him dunk a ball with his elbow up above the rim like that. So obviously he's got to have at least a 34, 35-inch vertical to do that. Very athletic. LaMarcus Morton from Gilmer, another dual guy, plays on both sides of the ball. Fantastic. Numbers, a lot of numbers on the offensive side and defense. Tough guy. Comes from Gilmer. Gilmer's old school, tough, hard-nosed football. He'll be a perfect fit for us. Tabo from Denton Geyer down there with Coach Walsh. Coach Walsh called us, 4 or 5 months ago and said, hey, you guys need to check this guy out. He's one of the best I've ever had. Very cerebral, gets it, understands. Best years are ahead of him. That's how we got on to Tabo. We talked about Odom. We talked about Rodriguez. Enoch fits the role of what we talked about. He's a 2-year guy that was at Michigan State at one time and set out. He's coming in for us, the 300-pounder, 425-pound bencher. It's kind of an interesting story. He actually trains with his dad. And, you know, you can just image Enoch, a guy that's 6'2", 303 pounds. You know, the body structure and what he looks like. He's a 425-pound bencher. And then when I went in on the home visit to the house, his dad was a bigger, better-looking athlete than him and in better shape. And he works out with him, and so we're excited about him. Talked about Trey Sterling. Brendan Vaughn, an outside backer type, like Sean Lewis. He's taller and rangier, but we need him to play like Sean, like Burton. We talked about Tylen, then Trayson Wallace, who's played quarterback. You know, he's had the knee injury. Should be up and running in 2 months. We'll get him in here and could do some things for us at the quarterback position. Obviously, he'll probably redshirt with Mason being back, but it'll be interesting to watch him develop over the next couple of years. And then we talked about Jelani. So that covers everybody. So appreciate you guys coming out. Any other questions? Good? All right, thanks.